Okay, students, let's look at week 1 set of videos here. The one from, I think this is the one from task 1. Let's take a look. Any day now. Visual Studios. Studio. I haven't been doing weird things lately. One of those things is not displaying something. Like the other day, I went to the design forum, and it's like sits there forever and a day. Finally, okay. Now then. Okay, so we have some code here, and the code here is mostly output, and then we have the setup for, let's suppose we were creating creatures. We want to be able to send some information in and do something. Now, first of all, I have a class which is called creature. I'll come back to that. Okay, so this is a class that I created, and CS271 is just a shorthand for indicating CC to be character creating, CO1 being one character. Okay, it could be, if I wanted another one, it would be CO2. If it was another one, I'd make it CO3, and so forth and so on. Okay, so one of the things that's literally new to you here is, so we come over here, we say create a creature equals new creature, and there's all of these numbers which are in here. Now, these numbers are sent to the creature class as a definition for attributes that we want for this. So let's take a look at creature class, and you can see these things come in, and the first one is I. So if we go back to the form, you can see there's 2 eyes, and then the next one is horns, and if I go back, then there's 1 horn, and then if you go back again, you see that there's no wings. Okay, and in doing that, I set 3 things. Okay, so these are coming into this thing called creature, and it is setting 3 variables, but you'll notice those variables aren't there. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, well, where are these variables? Well, I is in the class called eyes. Okay, and by the way, this says internal. For our function, it's the same as public, but there is a difference. Okay, so public int32 I. Okay, notice there's no S there. And it is set initially to 0, but when we go into creature, we go into here, and this thing I'll explain in a minute. This sets it to the number of eyes that we sent in. Okay, Same is true of horns. Okay, but notice one thing here. Horns, we have wings tacked onto horns, and we have eyes, which are tacked onto horns. Okay, so what is all of this? This is our first level of inheritance. And what I mean by that is these things, eyes, horns, wings, are all attached to each other. And creature is attached to eyes because it's all trickling down. Okay, so wings, you'll notice, isn't directly attached like this, but it is attached because it's connected to horns. Correspondingly, eyes is connected to horns. Okay, so horns is connected to wings. Horns is connected to wings. Eyes are connected to horns. So if you were to think about it, here's eyes right up here. If you jump back, you go to horns. If you jump back, you go to wings. Okay, so when I go here and I say creature goes to eyes, it inherits this variable, it inherits this variable, it inherits this variable. It inherits all three variables. So as far as creature is concerned, all of these are declared. They're declared here, where it says public I32 I. It's declared here when I have public int32 I horn. It's declared here when I have public int32 I wing. Okay, all of these were declared in these other classes as properties, and when creature connects to eyes, all of these exist. They are inherited one from another. Okay, so horns inherits eye wing. Eyes inherits eye horn. Creature inherits all three of these from eyes. Now I know that might be a little bit confusing right off the bat, but inheritance is a very, very, very important type of thing. Now this thing right here, you'll notice the class is called creature. Okay, but there's also this other thing in here called creature. You might be wondering what that is. This is something that we called a constructor. Now, anything that we pass in, okay, so right here we passed in these values, they go to any constructor that has 3 items. Now, we could have multiple constructors. I could put in a constructor also called creature. Let's do this. I'll probably get an error message here, but just so you know. Can't spell suddenly. Creature. And yeah, really I just need that. Okay, so as you can see there, I can create another possible input. The problem is it wouldn't do anything for our variables here. Okay, so I can put in a no parameter version of this constructor. I can put in, you know, 1, 2, 3 constructors. You'll see this one in a minute more obvious, but just so you know, these constructors allow you to preset certain things within the class. Sometimes we want to preset some values so that we don't have a problem with going into a class without information. Constructors are like an initialization. So when we are here and we are instantiating the object called creature, when we're instantiating that class into this object, CS271, all of that stuff is already filled out. It saves us from having to make a method call in order to set those equal to something. It also saves us, just as I mentioned here, we do these 3 things, and you know, we're setting these all ahead of time. Now, these all have to be public in order to be seen, and the reason they have to be seen is because I've got this set up so that I have, just so you can see this, I have a button and I have a list box. I use the list box simply as a output box. Okay, nothing more, nothing less. Okay, so I have this thing here. Here's some output. New creature, unicorn. And I say a unicorn has, and then I say cc.co1.i.toString, and then eyes. Okay, so this says, this is my output basically. Okay, a unicorn has, that's just plain text. cc.co1 dot ii.toString, because it happens to be an integer and I want to convert it to a string, and then I add on to the end of the string that, you know, this thing, it says eyes, or eyes, or number of eyes. And we do that for all of these things so that when we run it, let me get this down sort of in the middle of the screen. When I click start, you can see that it says new creature, unicorn. A unicorn has 2 eyes, a unicorn has 1 horn, and a unicorn has 0 pairs of wings. Okay, so this is inheritance. Now, this is not the only form of inheritance, and yeah, you might want to put on a seatbelt because it's going to get bumpy from here. So, you know, you may want to go through this a few times. I'm going to put up this form, count to 10. And then creature. Now, creature inherits from eyes, so eyes. Eyes inherits from horns. And horns inherits from wings. It's kind of like the last thing on the chain. Okay, so the form is just based upon pushing the button and having it all do this stuff. Ideally, when you're trying to make something for a graphical user environment, or really for any user environment, your goal is to have the graphical user environment or user environment so that it's calling everything else that are classes, so that the user interface is completely separate from the actual processing of the document. See here, I've only got the creation of the creature, and then the rest of this is all output. Okay, so let's call this the end of this video.